I'm Goodwin, author of 2 novels and a short story collection, and in this video I'm going to be illustrating how the theme of finding your place crops up in my fiction with short readings from each of my 3 books. What I mean by finding your place is the struggle that some of us go through in life, and sometimes it's a lifelong project, to find a situation where we feel comfortable and where we can fully be ourselves. And for some people that's especially difficult if perhaps their start in life hasn't been particularly secure, which sadly is the case for quite a few of my characters. However, some of them do have happy endings, so I hope you'll enjoy the readings and perhaps will want to find out more from my books. So to start with my first novel, which is here, this is Sugar and Snails, which was published in 2015, and it was shortlisted for the Polari First Book Prize. Sugar and Snails is about a woman with a secret at the heart of her identity, and she feels life won't be worth living if people find out about that. She's a middle-aged single woman, 45 when the novel opens, but she's looking back on her life as well as moving forward. And for her, a big change in her life came during adolescence at the age of 15, when she took a life-changing decision which altered the trajectory of her life. And I think adolescence is one of the big themes in this novel, and adolescence is a time of great change for any of us. That there are a lot of physiological and psychological changes, and we're often playing around with where to put ourselves, where we're going to be, trying on different identities to see which works for us. In this short reading, Diana, my character, is almost 15, and it's the summer holidays from school. So this is her looking back at this. It's in the 1970s, and she, her mother she's got, she lives with her parents and an older sister and a younger brother, and her mother has gone away on a mysterious mission to Cairo, which Diana's actually quite excited about the implications of that. And while she's away, Diana's looking after the house, and she's playing around really with the role of housewife. She quite enjoys it, but really it's a temporary retreat from the world. In a way, she's hiding away. So I'll just read this short section. I embraced the role of housewife with gusto. Returning from my morning paper round soon after 7, I'd rustle up a plate of eggs and bacon for my dad. While he was seated at the table, accompanied by some orchestra on Radio 3, I'd make up a couple of sandwiches for his snap and some for Trevor while I was at it, although he needed little incentive to stay outside all day. As soon as they'd gone, I'd retune the radio to the transistor to Radio 1 and take it upstairs while I chose my outfit for the day. I was too busy to feel lonely. I didn't want to just keep the place ticking over. I wanted to excel. I scrubbed between the tiles in the bathroom and shampooed the carpets upstairs and down. I patched sheets and trousers and sewed on buttons that had been missing for years. I retrieved the red miniskirt from its hiding place and put it through the wash, mended the tears till it was wearable again. I pored over recipe books and scoured the shelves in the supermarket for exotic tastes to surprise my dad and brother at mealtimes. In the heat of the afternoon, I'd lie on my bed with a cup of tea and one of my mother's magazines. I'd doze off to the voice of Jenny Murray on Woman's Hour. I was content, almost happy. Yet now and then I'd be ambushed by a feeling I couldn't fathom, a sense of loss, nostalgia for the childhood that was about to end. A sentimental song on the radio might spark it off, or a story out of Woman's Own. It kicked me in the stomach, winding me, and I'd collapse in a heap, doubled up, and wait for it to pass. My mother was gone for a week, then 2 weeks, then a little more. Even Trevor seemed to find this odd. "When's Mum coming back?" he demanded one tea time, disgruntled with my watery cauliflower cheese. We usually had the radio on to mask the silence, although neither Trevor nor I could appreciate classical music, and Dad wouldn't countenance anything else. Today it was an orchestral piece that jumped unpredictably between a whisper and a thunderburst. Trevor had raised the question in a quieter sequence, but we had to sit through a few clamorous bars before Dad deigned to reply. "When she's finished what she went there to do." "And when's that going to be?" "I really don't know," said Dad. Any minute now, Trevor would be asking what it was she'd gone for. He'd have worked out it wasn't a holiday. "Will she be back in time for us to go to Skegness?" "Nobody's going to Skegness this year," said Dad. Trevor was momentarily speechless. Then he started chuntering about how it wasn't fair, until I thought my dad was going to dob him one. Instead, he got up from the table without finishing his tea and went out to sit on the front step with his pipe, leaving my brother dangerously close to tears. He was right, it wasn't fair. I knew he'd feel worse if he set off crying in front of me, so I racked my brain for something that might cheer him up. "I was thinking of making a chocolate cake tomorrow." He stuck out his tongue. "Fruit cake would make more sense." So that's Sugar and Snails. Let's move on now to my second novel. If I take a moment to find the place that I'm going to read. So this novel is quite different, bit darker. Underneath, it's about a man who seeks to resolve a relationship crisis in an unusual and alarming way. And he just so happens to have bought a house with a cellar. This was published in 2017, and the extract I'm going to read is Steve. He's been travelling for doing odd jobs for about 20 years abroad. He's returned to the UK and he wants to put down roots. So he's looking for a place. He's literally looking for a place. He goes to look at this house that he ends up buying, the house with a cellar. So he's looking for somewhere secure to live, a job and a relationship. And he thinks he's really lucky when he meets Liesl in the canteen at work, when he's just started his new job as an operating theatre orderly. And he tells her, he happens to mention that he's house hunting, and she offers to go with him, and she seems to quite like the cellar at that point. But the bit I'm going to read it follows just after that, after they've looked at the house, so they're going on a kind of date. that Liesl, who's the woman, invites him to come with her to an art exhibition. And this reveals really some of the differences between them at an early stage. But at that point, the relationship is quite promising. So this is the trendy art gallery. A wall of dazzling glass concealed the gallery entrance, right round the corner from where anyone would expect to find it. Inside, an open-plan reception housed a sprawling shop peddling posters and postcards, overpriced jotters and coffee table books of high concept art. Pretentious tat. But hey, I was not buying it with Liesl. She stuffed her flip-flops in her shoulder bag as we entered the exhibition room. It was chilly and cathedral quiet apart from the whir of the air conditioning. The punters huddled in twos and threes, ogling splashes of colour framed under strategically placed lights. But it was the lofty ceiling that got me, the yards of unclaimed parquet. I expected Liesl to commandeer the space, spread her tanned arms and twirl like she'd done in the cellar. But she strolled across to a canvas daubed with reds from coral to carmine and gawped. I followed, reaching for her hand. "Sorry," she whispered, slipping her hand away. "I can't do it with someone else. Stops me feeling anything. It's nothing personal." Why did you invite me then, I thought, but I nodded, like some bearded guy on a Channel 4 arts programme, and made to contemplate the gory mess on the wall. When, after a few moments, Liesl moved on, I stayed. Yet it pissed me off. The painting was ugly and poorly executed, and resembled nothing I'd encountered this side of the room. To be honest, I found it kind of depressing. I turned my back and scanned the room for Liesl. She stood before a canvas that might have been meant to represent a bloody massacre or the maws of hell, or the artist's granddad's garage for all I cared. I watched her tongue caress the corner of her mouth. I watched her jaw clench. I decided if I couldn't make sense of the artwork, I could use the time profitably in untangling the idiom of Liesl's expressions. She hunched her shoulders, shifted her weight onto one foot, and scratched her ankle with a blue varnished toenail. She pursed her lips, wrinkled her nose, laughed, frowned, rubbed her bare arms, and shuffled into a patch of sunlight. In every pose and posture, she looked magnificent. The attendant rose from her stool by the door, flashing disapproval my way. I smiled and spread my hands, but I didn't take offence. After all, a stalker wouldn't look so different from a regular guy. Liesl had moved on to a pair of suppurating eyes, one big, one small, like the wheels of a penny-farthing bicycle. A glistening thread cut through her cheek like a scar. By the time I'd figured out she was crying, she looked radiant again. I clenched my fists. There was nothing for me here, and I could hang about for Liesl equally well outside. As I left the gallery, the attendant offered me a leaflet, but I shook my head. So that's Underneath, my second novel. And finally, I'm going to read a little bit from my short story collection, Becoming Someone. This was published in 2018, and it's a collection of 42 stories, all on the theme of identity. And how they're arranged in the book is that there's a kind of progression, so it's a kind of a journey although they're different characters, towards finding a secure place in the world, starting from characters who are rather lost to more triumphant, secure, satisfied people at the end. And I'm going to read this extract from the very first story, which is called Madonna and Child. And this is about a teenager struggling to adapt to new motherhood. However, she does think that she's found her place, but there are several more pages after that, so things might change. This is the opening. Madonna and Child. The whine of the bin lorry had her hurtling out of bed, leaving the door to the flat ajar as she dashed barefoot downstairs. Gagging at the stench from the partly opened lid, she grabbed the handle of the wheelie bin and lugged it across the cracked paving to the street. But the refuse lorry was already turning the corner, leaving behind a cluster of empty bins belonging to the more organised tenants of the apartment block. Fuck! From across the road, an old pair, en route from the posh houses to the shops, appraised her coldly. The Betty Boop t-shirt she wore as a nightdress barely covered her buttocks, and her hair was always a nightmare first thing. Gemma gave the old pair the finger and trundled the wheelie bin to its parking place by the back door, the rough paving damp beneath her feet. Whatever she did, however hard she tried, it was never enough. This was only a small disappointment, but brick by brick, her small disappointments and failures massed into a substantial wall, and her day hadn't even started. Why didn't her neighbours help out more? Was it beyond them to drag her bin around to the front along with their own? After all, a bin load of shitty nappies languishing by the back door until the next collection would offend them as much as Gemma. But they'd do anything to get back at her for the noise. Now the stairwell was uncannily quiet. Had the door to her flat slammed shut? Clad in nothing but a t-shirt, and with a hungry baby on the other side, she'd be fucked if it had. Gemma took the stairs 2 at a time. The door stood open, and silence reigned within. Brilliant, but also rather weird. Weird, too, was another kind of absence. Being snubbed by the bin men added only a tiny brick, the smallest piece of Lego instead of a chunk of breeze block, to the wall. Most days felt like running a marathon while taking an exam, with a hangover and no time for training or revision. Today, Gemma felt almost normal, the teenager she would have been if she hadn't been caught out. Her mother used to nag her about the benefits of a good night's sleep, but she hadn't bothered to teach her how to achieve such a thing on her own with a baby. Gemma calculated the hours of slumber. The bin lorry usually came around 9:30, and Millie had got off to sleep a little after 3. 6 solid hours of zzz. Tiptoeing into the bed-sitting room, a new feeling swept over her, colonising the space left by the departure of fatigue, frustration and rage. Asleep in the cot, Millie was like a doll fresh from the factory, only more perfect. A surge of love tempted Gemma to gather up the baby and smother her with kisses, but she resisted. Millie must be exhausted after several hours howling before Gemma had finally got her quiet. No point disturbing her now. So I'm going to leave that story there and skip to the last line, which is Peace and Harmony, Madonna and Child. But you need to read the story to judge what kind of piece that is. So that was my 3 readings. Just to remind you of my books, all 3 of these books are published by the small independent press Inspired Quill, and you can buy the books directly from their website in paperback and ebook form, or from various online channels, and even in some real life bookshops. And just to remind you that the short story collection is becoming someone. The novel about the creepy man who keeps somebody captive in the cellar is underneath, and my novel about the woman with a secret at the heart of her identity is Sugar and Snails. Thanks for watching.